All right. Good morning and welcome everyone to our webinar on bridging the pay equity gap. Sorry about that. The webinar is brought to you by JER HR Group and our Trainery Brand Solutions. JER HR Group is a national human resource firm with over 30 years of experience providing compensation consulting, employee learning, organizational development consulting, and HR services and support for over 300 clients nationwide. Our team of staff and consultants work collaboratively with our clients to develop and provide customized solutions that align with the client's needs and strategies. Our Trainery Brand Solutions offer a suite of products for e-learning, workforce training, and talent management that help HR departments to optimize employee skill sets, knowledge, productivity, and employee experience. After this webinar, you will receive a recording as well as a copy of the PowerPoint presentation via email. This morning's presenter is Renee Martin, and I will go ahead and turn this over to Renee to get us started.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I'd love to know where each of you are joining us from, if you don't mind throwing that in the chat, or put the most favorite place that you've ever lived in the chat, and that will be fun conversation as well. But anyway, I am part of the JER HR Group. I am working through the New York office and also the North Carolina office. In our new remote world that we all live in post 2019, I'm actually living in Memphis, but I am visiting family up in Pennsylvania for the summer. So joining you from the Northeast today. My background, I've been with JER for about 5 years doing consulting. But before that, I also, I was in-house HR in nonprofits, in academia. I've got about 10 years in manufacturing, and I was also in financial services. So I say that because I get, the challenges of being in-house and what that's like. So part of the information that we'll share with you today is recognizing the importance of addressing pay equity, why it's a good business practice to do that, and how you can go about looking at it, getting buy-in from your organization to address things that need to be addressed. So we really do come at this, in a way of partnering with you in being able to do that. So we'll look today at the numbers, because I think that's important for you to understand where we are in the, the lifespan of addressing pay equity, some of the reasons for the gap, why it matters. And, I think one of the most important areas is how we can fix it. So I do want to walk you through, even just with information that you have already in-house, what you can start doing to pull that together and see what your picture is like, and then address it from there. So my goal for today is to share best practices and give you practical application that you can use internally. Of course, we're here as a resource for you. If you'd like to reach out with questions, or if it's, we do have some organizations that say, you know what, we'd rather hand it off and have it done outside. And we're here to do that as well. So however we can meet you in your process, we're happy to do that. So by the numbers, women on average, so a lot of these will focus on gender. Some of these will get into, we're looking at race equity, of course, as well. But just as a starting point, back when the Equal Pay Act was enacted, women were paid about 59 cents on the dollar at that point in time. And you can see we've made some progress on that, but we're still 82%, meaning that for every dollar a man is paid, a woman is paid 82 cents on that dollar for, considerably equal work. That's where, I think that's important to recognize up front. We do have this gap. We need to address it. And, a lot of states are putting in laws around pay transparency for this very reason, because this does need to be addressed. There are long-term implications culturally, and business reasons as well to get this right. So this one really stood out to me, that over a 40-year career, so a woman would be paid over $400,000 less. So $407,760 for a 40-year career. When you think about that, that is retirement. That's fully funding your retirement. That's paying off your mortgage. That's significant. That's sending, a few kids to college. That is considerable. That's a considerable amount of money that families are missing out on because women are not paid the rate that they should be earning. So it's been 60 years since the Equal Pay Act has been in play, and the other piece that really stands out, we want to address this because it's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, the EEOC is recovering pay discrimination claims, $175 million over the last 5 years. So it is going to play out one way or another that this is corrected. I think the point that we want to be partnering with you today is, how do you get on the front end of that? How can you be proactive in addressing any inequities that you might have within your organization, and not waiting for that that to become a negative impact on your organization. So we want to be proactive, and we're here to help you. So at the current pace, you might think, okay, 59 cents on the dollar to 82, maybe that's not so bad. We're looking at another 36 years at the current pace that we're going. So, when you look at that, that's just not an acceptable answer. The thing that I'd liken it to, I'll be a little bit geeky and talk about, industrial revolution and within our country and where we came from. But you think back to the days where OSHA safety regulations were implemented, and it took to the point where people were working in horrible conditions, some of them leading to death, and it had to be addressed. It just became that imperative that it needs to be addressed. So we did address it. What did we start doing? Well, they now measure, days that are accident-free. There's all kinds of OSHA measures in terms of safety. And with that measurement, with that accountability, improvement does come. So we are taking the the directive of addressing pay equity. It's important to the states. It's important to us as citizens. It's important to us as a business to do those right things. And there are ways to measure it. And when we measure it and are accountable for it, it will improve. Okay, so we do own this, and we can do that. Reasons for the pay gap. Oftentimes there are a couple of myths around this in terms of, women opting to stay home to care for family. Maybe they're choosing lower paying jobs or having lower education. That is actually not true. When you look at studies in terms of education, women are often having higher education than men. which does help to close the gap, but it means that women have to take that further step just to get where men are with the lower education. So this first one is absolutely not true. To the, in terms of women having that higher education, that is true. When you look at women education across the country, the higher education percentages are more toward the women. Comparing equal education between men and women shows an even greater gap. Unfortunately, that is true. So women are having to take a lot more steps to be able to get the same pay that men get with a lower education. So this isn't about men versus women. This isn't about, one race versus another. This is about collectively, how do we fix the problem? These are the facts of the problem, and then we're going to move into how to fix them. So this last point, unfortunately, there is a motherhood penalty. Women who are parents often have a larger pay gap. So that can certainly inhibit their career progression, where interestingly, the opposite is true. Men who have children, I don't know if it's a way of taking care of the men for their families, but it doesn't apply to men. The penalty falls on the motherhood side. Okay, those are the facts. So why it matters? Well, there are legal requirements. I've touched on the social justice piece of this, which is leveling the playing field. It is unrealistic to think that any community is going to perform at 100% with fewer capital resources. So that means communities are disadvantaged. It could be communities of color. It could be communities of a particular race, or it could be, if you're looking at, single mothers as a community, it could be that community. So I think the question, if you're having trouble getting buy-in within your organization, some of the questions could be, what if it were your community that was disadvantaged? Would you change it? And would you prioritize it as an issue to be addressed? Because at the end of the day, we all pay for that inequity. We all do. Women live longer. They're out of the workforce for longer periods of time to invest in their children, and they make less money. They are paid less money than men. So as a society, we pay for it one way or another. Either we have people that we need to take care of because they've made less money. They're, at the end of the day, we all pay for that in one form or fashion. So the biggest reason that I'd like to stand by really is that it's a solid business strategy. It's not fun for an organization to have to be in a position where they're receiving discrimination claims. It damages your brand, and it makes it harder to recruit and retain staff. Pay transparency is here to stay. People want to understand what their pay, why they're paid what they are, and they want to have a trust in the organization that there is equity. Lastly, of course, it builds organizational diversity by being an employer known for your commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. It helps your brand. It helps loyalty with your employees, that they understand how they're paid and the brand reputation that you have. So that definitely makes a difference in your attractiveness as an employer. So how together can we fix it? First, you're going to abide by the state laws. So whatever state you are in, there are laws specific to what you can and can't ask job seekers around their salary history. And this is important just to prevent those pay inequities, whatever historic pay inequities might be there. We certainly don't want to see those carried forward. So that's why that's in place. And then, following the laws in terms of pay transparency, what you might have to include in a job posting, that's going to be state by state. Conducting a pay equity audit, and then having a way of sharing with your employees that you are committed to the process of pay equity. Sharing, you're certainly not going to share details. That's not the employee's, realm of sight, but you can have a strategy of communicating your commitment to pay equity, to reviewing it on a regular basis. And the more transparent you can be with salary ranges, that usually is helpful in kind of employees seeing where they fit in. So with that said, I really want you to have today some practical tasks that you can do to carry forward and be able to start looking at pay equity in your organization. So I'm going to refer to this. You see kind of like a rainbow on your screen, which is one of so these are best practices. First of all, you are going to protect your own organization, you do need to establish legal privilege. So you getting counsel from your external counsel, your internal counsel, how you establish that legal privilege. So I want to make sure your organization is protected first. Then it is a best practice to review salaries on an annual basis. We've helped clients to do kind of an annual review and then put together salary administration guidelines so that throughout the year, any hiring or promotions that you're doing can fall in line with your approach, and it can all work in sync together. So review salaries annually. And then certainly if you have salary administration guidelines that are in sync with that review, that's going to make your life a little bit easier. You can make those, ongoing decisions can be made in a way that situate you well. And so hopefully there are less things flagged on your audit when you do look at them annually, because you've taken that rigor to your process throughout the year. The third piece here, kind of in yellow, is some of you may have salary structures in place. So you might have grades 1 through 12, for example, and you might have salary ranges for each of those grades. If you do, that's what you're going to use for your pay equity audit. When you print out a report from your HRIS system, it'll have your employees and it'll have them by pay grade, and that's a great starting point. If you do not have that, if you do not have grades, you do want to be able to group employees based on similar work or work that's of equal value. So you might have, you might have a couple positions that kind of, these are, priced pretty closely in terms of market equity. They're priced pretty similarly, and they also have a similar amount of authority, supervision, skill set, education is similar for these positions. So ways that you can kind of group employees based on similar work. So that could be part of your analysis where you're able to group them that way, and that will help you look within that group at equity across the group. Of course, along the way, you're going to maintain accurate employee data, and that's all going to help you in the analysis. And then certainly, getting to a point where you can just determine whether there are pay inequities that may exist and to what extent, so that then you can come up with a solution. Okay, these are the areas that we have some inequities. Let's drill down further, do a little bit more analysis, and then what's our plan to close the gap? Some organizations are able to say, you know what, we're bringing everyone to the minimum of the range. We're closing that gap right now. That's one approach. If that's not in your budget, then that's not a reality. It might be more of a phased approach. We're going to take this step now, a year from now or 6 months from now, we're going to take this step. So it may be a little bit more of a phased approach depending on the revenue within your organization and overall needs of the organization. So some of the differences, when we do get into the data, we're going to look at some of the potential acceptable reasons for differences in pay. So certainly once you're looking at your data, then you can start, if you do within that employee grade, if you notice that there are differences, there could be valid reasons for the differences. And so we're going to come back to this. I just want you to keep this part in the back of your mind, the differences in education, experience, specialized skills, someone who has a strong performance record, location sometimes comes into play, a little bit less so post-COVID, but if they're working in places that have a material difference in the cost of labor, you may see some pay differences based on location. That would be valid reasons for that difference in pay.
Renee.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quick because there are two questions that were kind of relevant to exactly what you're talking about right now, and I didn't want to pass up this opportunity. We have two questions, and I'm going to read them both. One of them is, how about age-related concerns? And the other one says, does this CPE qualify with NC-CPA? And you can look at that in the chat. I might not know what those abbreviations are, but I know she does.
Okay. Okay, I will look at that in the chat. So the first question was around age and whether age comes into play in differences.
Yes, it just says, how about age-related concerns?
Okay, yes. There's a couple things that stand out to me in that question. So I am just going to share this next screen because I think this will help get to address that question. Age is going to be, it is going to be something in your data. You're certainly going to have your date of hire, your time in position. Age specifically, the only reason that we would look at that, kind of, I guess, date of birth would be in the payroll system, would be to say, if I've got two office managers, for example, one is 20 years old and one is 60 years old, you could guess, or you could presume that the 60-year-old has more experience than the 20-year-old. Now, you would need to look back at that employee's information. So age could be a flag to say, okay, if the 20-year-old was making more than the 60-year-old, why would that be? Because you would think the 60-year-old has more experience. So then it would become, okay, well, let's look at the education, the experience. Does the 20-year-old have some specialized skill set that the older individual doesn't? But this you do want to use age only as a way of helping you, just as kind of, if you saw that a 20-year-old and a 60-year-old were paid the same amount, you would eyeball that and say, well, the 60-year-old probably has a lot more experience, so why would that be the case? So you're kind of using that as a barometer to then say, I need more information about this comparison because it doesn't pass the smell test. Not sure if that's answering the question that you have, because to the, there's certainly pay inequities. It could be age discrimination, to your point. And that is also something that that you would want to flag and make sure is addressed.
Awesome. And there was some clarification. Thank you so much, Russell, for clarifying those initials in the chat for me. So the question is, does this CPE qualify with NC-CPA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy?
I don't know. I would have to take that question offline.
Okay, great. And at the end of this webinar, you are going to receive, you're going to see Renee's email. So maybe that might be a question that you two can touch base with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds great. Thank you, Kayla. And thank you for the good questions. So yes, I know while we are focusing heavily on gender and race inequities, certainly age discrimination is something that, as I look at these for organizations, I'm also looking at that age to make sure that there's no age discrimination occurring as well. So, okay, so in your assessment, to begin your assessment, what you would do, you're running a report from your payroll system. It's going to show you if you have, it's going to show you, certainly the job title, who's in that position, the grade if you have it, the hire date. So this is what you're going to run out of your payroll system. And then you can build in formulas to calculate based on hire date. Obviously, that's going to be able to tell you what their tenure is. So let's see, 3 columns from the right. So that's going to tell you your tenure with the organization. This is really what you're looking at, your time and position. So that's going to tell you if someone is new. So this first person, 0.9, they've got less than a year in their position. That's going to kind of tell you, you're also going to be able to overlay this with your job grades and the salary ranges. So it depends. I'm giving you kind of a surface where you start, but if you're at the level where you're already looking at comp ratios and you're looking at, a new person's going to be toward, maybe an 80% comp ratio, and somebody who's been in the job for 20 years might be at 120% comp ratio. If you're already doing that, that's certainly additional information that you can use. But I'm keeping this really basic, which is just kind of this is a little bit more assuming that you might not have the salary grades, or you might not be at the level of using comp ratios. If you are, you absolutely, comp ratios would be in here as well as a flag to say, okay, a 20-year-old, this first person is 20 years old. And if they were making, if they were already at the midpoint or the maximum of their range, that would be a flag. Well, why is that? Were they just really good at negotiating, or do they have some specialized skill? Why are they paid higher than some of the other folks? So, I'll go back a slide. From this kind of HRIS report out of your payroll system, you'll be able to get to these fields in orange, or what I've added, to see the time and position, how long have they been in their current job. The next one, tenure, is how long they've been with the organization. And then whether a change was recommended for that individual or not. So that's kind of the outcome, the recommendation at the far right there. But there's a lot of information in here, and what I've typically done with organizations, we would then start to add in columns for years of experience. So maybe their tenure's low, but maybe they were somewhere else for 40 years. They have a career record of 40 years before they came to us. So that's going to be an important column. So going back to these potentially acceptable reasons. One of the things that I've done with clients is to go through and just kind of add a column. Okay, well, what's this person's education versus the others? If there's a difference in pay, is it because of one of these reasons, or is there an inequity that's not really explainable? It's not a valid difference in pay, and we need to do something about it. We need to close the gap on that pay. So adding columns for education, years of experience, any specialized skills. There's certainly been organizations that have said, this person is the face of our organization. They have a lot of external relationships that are important to us, and we pay them a little bit more because of that, because of the value that they bring. So that might kind of be under like specialized skills or relationships. Maybe it's someone who's, hit it out of the park for the last 10 years. Their performance has driven up their pay rate. And that's, so you may end up bringing in their last performance, rating from the last 2 or 3 years as part of your analysis. So those are all, and then certainly location, and you can run that right out of your system as well. To make sure that the bottom line is really to look at pay within similar jobs, and if there are variances, what are they based on? And if they're not valid reasons for a pay difference, then those become the areas that need to be addressed. Okay. So I've walked you through kind of some of the manual things that you can do running a report out of your system. I probably wouldn't be a very good consultant if I didn't share with you what technology can do for you. And certainly if you have questions about how to marry this with your salary structure, and if you already do comp ratios, that becomes, that helps you in the process as well. And I can certainly, could certainly address questions with that. But we internally at JERHR Group use a system called Comp Builder. And what that will do, it helps us, we can do market pricing in here. We can do all kinds of, interesting things. And the graphics of it make it really easy. If you're a visual person like I am, it's nice to be able to see kind of, okay, if we're looking at these lower, so the far left would be like lower grade positions. These were jobs that were evaluated. So this one has 800 points. This one has 1,000. This is based on the level of the job, based on what the job calls for. So some of these lower pay ranges you're seeing, that's a lot of, you've got kind of the midpoint here, and then you've got, if you can see the circle on the left-hand side, you've got, that's a lot of variability. You've got people, it looks like, earning maybe 80,000 up to, you've got an outlier up here at like 145. So that would be kind of for a similar job. So that's a big spread, especially on the low end of positions, where your lower end positions in the salary range, you need to stick more closely with market, because otherwise you're at risk for people, job switching. You want to be able to keep those tight. They're coming in those lower level jobs, and they need to be pretty tightly paid. So any salary structure that we build, we're making that the lower level positions tighter in the pay range. So to see here, 80,000 up to 145,000, that's a huge range for that level of a position. So I would want the first question, the beauty of the graphic is that you can say, okay, what is this 145,000, one at 140? What are these ones that are kind of outliers? And then especially if they're reds or light blues, which indicates a different race or gender. So I guess the dark blue is white males, and then others would be showing up in red and light blue. So especially where you see, it looks, just looking at it, says you've got some inequities in here, and we need to have a better understanding of why and what's going on in there. And there's probably some things that need to be fixed. That's a pretty big range. So the beauty of, you can get it into the graphic level, which will jump out at you, or certainly the comp ratio level. If you have a midpoint for your range and you know what that midpoint is, you can see whether they're below or above, and is that okay given what they bring to the table. So I will just share with you kind of what the outcome of some of your analysis could be. So in this particular one, we took all the people in a grade 3. Okay, which grade 3 might be coordinators, associates, that type of maybe level of position. And of all, there were 18 incumbents. Of all of those incumbents, it was an average salary of $56,778. Now, what we learned when we broke it down by gender is that 5 of them were male, 13 were women. The average pay for men was $63,000, where the average pay for women was $54,000. So there's a 17% variance here. So then below, you'll see some of the reasons that we start to write up. Okay, well, what is the difference? Is it due to less experience? We go into tenure and what some of those questions might be as a way to dig deeper and really understand if there are valid reasons for those differences or whether there are not valid reasons. And then a plan would need to be made to address those inequities. We did the same thing specific to race, where 11 of the 18 incumbents were white, 7 were non-white. And again, there is a variance. So the white were making 13% more than the non-white. So that surfaces all of the questions that you see below, where, why is that? Well, we noticed that a female non-white coordinator is paid 27% less than the female white coordinator, despite similar tenure. So that seems off. So then we look further at the non-white coordinator. They're 14 years younger, so presumably might have less experience, which could serve as rationale. So these are possible explanations, but we would work with the company to identify, tell me what's really going on between these two people, and is there a valid reason or not? So we can say maybe this is the reason, but then you have to know, we would need to do the legwork of researching that. So these are kind of some of the things you would see in the data, and then it drives you back to, looking at the individual experience, education, other factors that might be in play there. I know this is a tough topic, it's sensitive, so I will open the floor to questions, and certainly if you'd rather talk offline, that is fine too.
I know there was an anonymous posting just now, and it says, being in the same grade isn't the same as being in the same or similar job. So I guess they're just trying to point out, various jobs could be within the same grade.
Yes, there would absolutely. There can be multiple different titles within a grade. So the grade is going to be driven by, yes, there could be a number of different positions within a grade. Whether you're what determines the grade level is based on the job description itself and what level of responsibility is in that position? Do they supervise people? Do they have budget authority? What kind of decision making is within their purview? What are they responsible for? What education is needed? What specialized, if they need a certification in things? What are the things that add value to that job? So when we perform an analysis, we would do a job evaluation using the point factor system, which is, the gold standard. It's been around as long as I can remember, and evaluating the job based on the responsibilities of that position. Okay, so that's going to give you a point value. So then positions with a similar point value will be put into that job grade. And then the second component of it is the market analysis. So then you're taking each of those jobs and you're pricing them relative to the market, and you're coming up with pay ranges for those positions. So both of those together, the job evaluation and the market analysis, are what are helping to build that's the foundation of building those salary structures. So yes, there could be 10 different positions in a grade, and they all are very different. Some might have direct reports. Usually you'll see kind of some managers bunched together, some directors bunched together. The titling sometimes follows, but sometimes there are, ones that slot in. Maybe it's a higher level title, but they don't have direct reports. So maybe it's down a grade. There could be varying, it depends on the exact position and how it when it's evaluated, how it compares to the other positions in that group. But yeah, the positions could be very different, but still have the same level of impact, and then, level of value in terms of market pricing as well. I hope that answers the question there.
Perfect. Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in through the chat. As you can see on the screen, again, Renee's email is right there and phone number. So if you have any follow-up questions, always feel free to reach out. And thank you so much, Renee, for that very interesting presentation. I really do appreciate it. I know I always learn something on these webinars. I always think I know going in, but I always learn something. It's amazing. As I mentioned earlier, you will be receiving a copy of the presentation and a recording of the webinar in your email. Generally speaking, that will come in maybe about Monday or Tuesday. So keep a watch on that. And I want to thank you all again for joining us. And I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon and a safe weekend.